For over 2 decades, the Johto League has been a corrupt establishment that's besmirched the reputation of one of the most beautiful regions in all of Pokémon. Think about it. Gym leaders refusing to give out badges, Elite Four members with lazy RNG-heavy strategies, and a willful lack of representing Johto's natural fauna in direct opposition of Article 4, Section 3 in the League Charter, all spearheaded by a champion who devalues human life in favor of bloody vengeance. They all think they can do whatever they want without any consequences. So it's all gotta go. Tear it all down, start over. It's time for a rebellion. We're gonna blow up the Johto League from the inside by assembling a squad of rebels and becoming champions. My team's gonna need to be scrappy. They can't be afraid to get their hands dirty. Rebellion isn't for the faint of heart. So it's only logical that they'll have to be poison types, if you don't think about it too hard. My first teammate is a Spinarak from Route 30, and as the very first freedom fighter, he'll be invaluable. A symbol of the rebellion, a leader for all others to look up to. His name is PETA. Now, the current issue with PETA is that he is at level 2, and with a low base power Poison Sting as his only attacking move, anything that can fight back will be able to easily take him out, including even a level 2 Caterpie. What PETA needs is the Pokemon version of a hapless potato sack that he can smack around without any risk of getting hit back. And thankfully, Metapods on Route 30 fill that role to a T. Of course, anytime I run into a Pokemon that isn't a Metapod, I'll need to run away before they kill us, which isn't exactly guaranteed given PETA's remarkably low speed stat. Frankly, the odds of PETA getting killed before we find even a single Metapod are not in his favor. But with a little luck, we find the pod, PETA gets his very first kill, and he grows to level 3. Aw yeah, PETA's really cooking with gas now. He's tasted his first drop of blood and is on his way to becoming a full-blown revolutionary. After assassinating just a few more Metapods, the Wriggly Caterpies are no longer a threat. By level 8, he's even taking on his natural predators. Oh, how far the young lad has already come. And so, at level 10, PETA's ready to graduate from field training and move on to his first solo mission, taking out youngster Mikey. All in all, it's a painless endeavor. PETA doesn't even flinch as his 2 civilian marks fall to just a few hits apiece. And on the other side of Mikey is an opportunity to recruit a few more soldiers for our cause. From Route 31, Haymitch the Bellsprout. From Dark Cave, Katniss the Zubat. And from Sprout Tower, Rue the Ghastly, the latter of whom will all but single-handedly ensure that we can defeat the first gym leader Faulkner. His lead Pidgey has no way to hit Rue for damage, though we too have no way to hit him. So the plan is to whittle the tiny bird down with poison stings from PETA in the hopes of getting a poison before he dies. It's not the best plan since in theory poison sting only has a 30% chance to poison, but in reality I swear that's closer to like 80%, and if you ignore basic statistical analysis, that's indubitably supported by getting the poison on our very first hit. So with that, I can switch to Rue and spam Spite until PETA's toxins slowly and painfully drain the life from Pidgey's body until he's nothing more than a motionless pile of cartilage and feathers. Rebellion is not for the faint of heart. With Rue out at full HP against Faulkner's Pidgeotto, I can enact my plan. Clicking Curse. Rue's faster than Pidgeotto, so she's guaranteed to get it off, but this is risking her life to a critical hit Gust. So as Faulkner's ace fires off his attack, I hold my breath to see if Rue becomes the first soldier to die for our cause. But with 6 HP, she lives. So from here, I can switch out to Katniss, and then it's just a matter of supplementing the curse damage with a few bites. I fear that we're in it for the long haul, as Pidgeotto goes for a roost, but with a critical hit, we bring our foe down into the red, and then Rue gets the last laugh as Curse knocks out Faulkner's ace and wins us the very first gym badge of our journey. Before leaving Violet City for good, Professor Elm's aide gives me a free egg, which I mean is huge in this economy. And then it's off to Azalea Town, where there's little to do besides take on Bugsy, yet another violator of A4S3. Taking out his mighty Scyther will mostly be Katniss's responsibility, who after eating a Leer, does solid damage with Wing Attack, but not wanting to eat an essentially boosted Quick Attack, I make sure to switch to Rue. Scyther then sets up a Focus Energy, which means that she can rip a Nightshade that triggers our foe's Citrus Berry. And then Scyther uses U-Turn, which despite being quad resisted, does 50 50% before Kakuna comes in and tanks the Nightshade. This grants me a fairly safe switch back to Katniss, who shrugs off a Poison Sting and gets the KO with a Wing Attack, bringing Scyther back in. This time she immediately rips a Quick Attack before our Wing Attack frustratingly leaves our foe with just a sliver. As Bugsy opts for a Super Potion, I too heal up with a Roost. A Focus Energy means that we can get off a Wing Attack for free, though after eating a Quick Attack, another hit once again leaves Scyther in the red. So now I could risk the critical hit, but I've seen far too many of those in my day, and it's way too early in the campaign to lose a soldier like Katniss. So instead, I switch back to Rue. This should hopefully bait U-turn, so I now bring Katniss back in, as Scyther plays ball and does indeed U-turn out into Metapod, letting us get back to nearly full HP via Roost before taking the KO with a Wing Attack and ensuring our victory. Because Bugsy's huggable ace comes out for the very last time, and all she can do is set up another Focus Energy before our Wing Attack finally takes the KO. Thanks to an incredible performance from Katniss, badge number 2 is ours.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I've struggled through this Bugsy fight. And as fun as these challenges still are, even I need to change things up from time to time, which is why I'm super excited about the sponsor of this video, Wildbound. Wildbound is an upcoming monster taming RPG with a modern open world approach that just launched their Kickstarter campaign. The 6-person development team behind Wildbound has spared no expense, and a lot of what I love about Pokémon is also featured here. Like 200 unique wilds, look at how cute, that evolve into stronger forms, and a strategic turn-based combat system centered around 18 elements with their own intricate interactions. But it's the differences that make Wildbound special and are what excite me the most. Like how the player collects DNA from fallen wilds and reanimates them to fight in battle, which is thematically perfect for the game's built-in hardcore Nuzlocke-esque challenge mode that also features universal level scaling as you progress through both the main quest line and countless rich side stories. Wildbound also has unique replayability, as players can choose to start in any one of Avium's 4 regions that all unlock distinct wilds, storylines, and challenges. Wildbound is planning to launch on Steam, Xbox Series X and S, PS5, and the Switch 2, all with seamless multiplayer. But in order to do so, they need our help. So if you're interested in seeing Wildbound come to life, you can use my link to check out the Wildbound Kickstarter that's live now, featuring rewards such as Alpha Access in 2026, exclusive Astral mounts, and more. Thanks so much to Wildbound for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the challenge.
Azalea Town has one more threat in the form of our rival Snow, who admittedly doesn't really fit into the narrative I've constructed, but whatever. Although Katniss can outspeed and one-shot Snow's lead Ghastly with a bite, the rest of his team is excruciatingly painful to deal with, especially since half of my squad is weak to fire-type attacks from his Quilava. Fortunately, Snow seems to favor spamming Smokescreen over doing damage with Ember, though that obviously comes with its own frustrations. Nevertheless, I make a slight gamble by having Rue fire off another curse, so after a switch back to Katniss, Quilava goes down without too much of an issue. That just leaves Snow with his own Zubat, and since we have Wing Attack while he does not, you'd think this would be pretty straightforward, but Quilava was able to get off a Smokescreen on Katniss before going down, and as a result, we miss our first Wing Attack, letting Zubat connect with a 55% accurate Supersonic, which has a strong case for the most irritating move in the entire damn game. So what happens next is 4 full minutes of switching around and attempting to get off damage before Zubat, without fail, connects with Supersonic after Supersonic, and a critical hit bite. God forbid I try to hit a Sleep Powder though. But eventually Katniss can get the KO, and with that we're free to enter Ilex Forest, where our 5th teammate awaits, Plutarch the Oddish. The little weirdo will mostly be on the sidelines, but eventually his time to aid the rebellion will come. And when it does, he'll need to be ready. Johto's capital city of Goldenrod houses the greatest threat to our journey so far, but it also provides us with an opportunity to recruit an additional 3 new teammates. North of the city from Route 35 and 36, I get Wyrus and Beatty, the female and male Nidorans respectively, who I personally consider different encounters. Both immediately evolve into their separate middle stage forms, providing my ragtag group of rebels a marginal increase in power. Then our 3rd new encounter is was a purchase from Goldenrod City's Game Corner, a lonely Ekans named Joanna, who by the grace of Arceus actually has the ability Intimidate. It feels like it's been a lifetime since I've actually gotten Intimidate in a 50-50 coin flip. Joanna will be critical to defeating the third gym leader Whitney, perhaps the single most egregious example of the Johto League's corruption. In what world is this petulant, emotional child fit to be a gym leader? She's an insult to everything the league is supposed to stand for, though even so, I cannot afford to let my guard down. Her Miltank's violent proclivities are well documented, and unless I want to be another victim on a long list of lost souls, I have to play this smart. First is Whitney's Clefairy, so I lead with Beatty, hoping to get a quick 2-hit KO with super effective double kicks, but before an attack even goes off, I realize that I've made a mistake. Since double kick hits twice, that means that there's a second chance to trigger Clefairy's cute charm, which would leave Beatty infatuated and likely immobilized. So much for playing smart. To get around this, I decide to first hit Clefairy with a Leer as she rolls the dice via metronome and comes up short with a Swallow. On the following turn, Beatty rips a double kick, immediately triggering Cute Charm, and then coming up just shy of the clean KO. The little fairy then retaliates with a limp 2 hits from Double Slap. Since our poison point didn't trigger, Whitney will now heal, so I switch to Wyrus, who with her rivalry ability, gets a boost to her attacks when facing off against female Pokemon, but a nerf when facing males. So this fight is actually one of the few matchups where rivalry is a blessing, and with that boost, it's enough to get a clean KO with 2 hits from Double Kick, bringing Whitney down to her second and scariest Pokemon. Miltank immediately goes for damage, and thankfully Wyrus dodges the flinch to hit her with a Growl. So now it's time to avoid some critical hits. I bring in Plutarch, hoping that it'll bait Miltank into going for Attract, which would grant a safe switch to Joanna to get off an Intimidate. Sadly, it doesn't work, but Joanna successfully dodges 2 critical hits to get off a Screech, thereby dropping Miltank's defenses by 2 full stages. This is already huge, but I decide to press my luck just a little bit more. Joanna eats yet another critical hitless Stomp, and by dodging another flinch, she can nail Miltank with a second Zoom Lens boosted Screech. Great performance, Joanna. Now it's time to bring Beatty back in. Even at -2, Stomp is doing a solid chunk of damage. But as long as Miltank doesn't get a critical hit, we've got this in the bag. Holy shit. It's undeniable that we're getting quite lucky. No flinches and surviving Miltank's sole critical hit. Unfortunately though, we're not done. I have to switch to Wyrus as Whitney heals. Another Stomp fails to get the flinch, so our rivalry boosted double kick brings the bovine down all the way into the red. All we need is one last hit. Stomp comes out, and Wyrus connects with a final double kick to net us an unexpectedly deathless victory. Whitney throws her usual temper tantrum, and without any regulation or consequences for this, there's nothing I can do but wait for her to cool down. Eventually, the badge is mine, and the soothing sound of Ecruteak City confirms that my team and I have successfully made it to the mid-game completely tragedy-free. Here I get just one more teammate, a gentle coughing named Lucy Gray from the Burn Tower. And with the new level cap of 25, everyone but our most recent recruit is finally able to evolve, granting our team a much-needed upgrade. In fact, Katniss manages to evolve twice, becoming the true face of the rebellion. No offense, PETA, and what better way to announce her arrival than with a dominant sweep of Morty's ghost types. Bite one-shots all of his Pokemon, save for the Gengar, who's nullified by a held Chesto Berry in case Hypnosis connects, which it doesn't. Granted, a Citrus Berry means that Morty's ace actually survives a second bite, but since he merely wastes a turn going for Mean Look, 2 more bites post-Hyper Potion result in a damageless victory. Well, I guess it's not completely damageless because Haunter uses a priority Sucker Punch for 12 whole damage before we get the KO. But regardless, that's badge number 4. Now the 5th gym leader lies across Johto's bright blue seas in Cyanwood City, so I need a Pokemon that can learn Surf, and to do that, we'll need a fishing rod, which I can get from the fishermen in Olivine City. Whoops, wrong house. The good rod is a gift from the other fishermen in Olivine City. I wonder if those two are friends or enemies? Or maybe frenemies? Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But what happens when you teach 2 men to fish? Chaos, heartbreak, drama. The hit new series, Fishing Rivals, premieres Tuesday at 8/7 Central on CBS. With the good rod, I have a very good chance of fishing up a Tentacool back in Newbark Town. It takes just 2 pulls to snag Finnick the Tentacool, who will be invaluable as our run continues. While I'm here, I decide to swing by Route 32 in the hopes of fishing up a quillfish, though with a measly 2% encounter rate, we could be here for a long time. Okay, I swear this footage is completely unedited. I can't believe that happened. Remember training PETA against all those metapods? Yeah, those guys had a 10% encounter rate, and it literally took me 23 attempts to find the first one. So this is like a massive time saver. Welcome to the Resistance, Maisley. A modest nature isn't exactly ideal for what's ostensibly a physical attacker, but Maisley more than makes up for it with her own unique je ne sais quoi. Meathead Chuck is Cyanwood City's gym leader, and his 2 fighting types have pretty lousy matchups against most of my poison types. I decide to lead with Maisley so that she can lay down a layer of toxic spikes against Primeape to better deal with Poliwrath. The downside of this is that it lets Primeape set up a double team for free. I was hoping to mitigate that with a zoom lens, but it turns out Maisley is actually faster than Primeape, rendering our held item completely useless. Fortunately, Maisley decided to lock in by connecting with a Surf before Primeape sets up a second double team, and then, after going for another layer of toxic spikes and shrugging off a weak rock slide, her second Surf connects as well. Maisley might very well be the world's luckiest quillfish. Frankly, her vague supernatural talents are being wasted here. What she should really be doing is helping a hardened detective solve crimes in a weekly police procedural. Where there's a quill, there's a way. Thursdays on CBS. Joanna comes in to intimidate Poliwrath, and then Plutarch can use Mega Drain and Toxic Residual to safely defeat Chuck's ace and win us badge number 5. Killing the Red Gyarados sets off the Team Rocket plotline, featuring several confusingly low-leveled mini-boss fights in Rocket Hideout. Regardless, this part here never made any sense to me. Why would a Murkrow be able to perfectly mimic Petrol's voice? Does Nintendo not know what a parrot is, or is this some sort of special Murkrow with the powers of human speech? Murkrow Murders, Mondays on CBS! After clearing through Rocket Hideout, but before heading to Radio Tower, we have 2 quick gym badges to collect. Against Price, Rue uses a few Thunderbolts to take out Seal and Dewgong before Finnick drowns Piloswine with a Choice Spec Surf. Against Jasmine, Joanna kills the 2 Magnemites with a single dig apiece, and then this time it's Maisley who comes in to take the final KO with a Choice Spec Surf. While thwarting Team Rocket back in Goldenrod City, Lucy Gray evolves into the bulky Weezing, just in time to watch her teammate murder an entire flock of her own kind. Our rival Snow remains a relentless presence on our quest, but continually proves to be nothing more than a nuisance. Confusions from Golbat, paralysis and confusions from Magnemity, curses from Haunter. He's a cool guy. This is really fun. It isn't long until we've made it to the fight against Team Rocket's new leader Archer, and like Giovanni before him, he's easily dispatched by a halfway decent water type. 3 Surfs from Maisley, and Team Rocket has been roundly defeated. So now we can head back to Blackthorn City, where Johto's other petulant gym leader awaits. As usual, Claire's Kingdra is the main threat, with her sniper ability ensuring that 1 critical hit will be all it takes to get the clean KO. Against Gyarados, I have Maisley set up 2 layers of toxic spikes before switching into Rue on a Dragon Rage. She can then get the quick kill with a Thunderbolt, bringing in the first of Claire's Dragonaires. Wait, that rhymes. Is that why her name is Claire? Anyways, I'm hoping that an Ice Beam from Finnick is enough to get the KO on the Serpent siblings, but it isn't. However, since the first Dragonair just uses Thunder Wave, which gets healed by Finnick's held Cherry Berry, this does result in using up one of Claire's Hyper Potions. Against the second Dragonair, however, Finnick does get permanently paralyzed, though a lucky dodge from Slam ensures that my sneaky squid is still at nearly full HP as Kingdra comes in last. Claire decides to play dirty by immediately using a smokescreen. Shocker. And the result is that Finnick is now trying to hit through paralysis and accuracy drops. After also tanking a Dragon Pulse, Finnick goes 0 for 2 and puts me in a pretty tough spot. I decide to switch to Katniss, who takes massive damage from another Dragon Pulse, but at this point, Maisley's spikes are doing respectable chip to Kingdra. I use Roost for a turn, which lets Katniss survive a critical hitless Hydro Pump, as the toxic residual now brings Kingdra into the yellow, triggering her her held Citrus Berry. So on the next turn, Katniss takes flight. The hope is that one last turn of toxic damage is enough to bring our foe into range of a KO. But before that, I gaze up at the symbol of our rebellion, free amidst the clouds. For but a moment, there's a beautiful stillness to the world. And it's this moment, Katniss soaring through the sky. This is the moment worth remembering, not what happens next. Katniss gave everything she could, and though it wasn't enough to save her life, it was enough to get us the victory. The 8th gym badge is ours, and through Katniss's sacrifice, the rebellion is on its way to the Pokémon League. Soon we'll all be flying through the clouds, free from the shackles of tyranny, and we'll have Katniss to thank for it. But before facing off against the Elite Four, we have another challenge, proving our worth to the Kimono Girls of Ecruteak City. And as we stand now, my team is not prepared for the onslaught of all 5 evolutions that's coming our way. No, we need to power up. Specifically, I have 4 teammates that need evolution stones to be at their full potential. But in order to get them, we need to enter the Pokeathlon. And oh boy, if you thought the corruption of the Johto League was bad, the insidious practices of the Pokeathlon make Lance look like Mr. Rogers. Referees paid off to reward arbitrary points, 0 safety measures across every event, a complete disregard for concussion protocols. I haven't seen this level of disregard for the general well-being of athletes since, well, the entire history of the NFL. It's no wonder that my team can't win the stamina course. The odds are stacked against us at every turn. But even in failure, we can still slowly accrue our share of points. And with enough patience, I can get the 2 leaf stones needed to evolve Plutarch and Haymitch, as well as the 2 moonstones needed to evolve Wyrus and Beatty. So now we've got more than enough power to handle the Kimono sisters. Hopefully. I'm leading with Peta. Remember him? Because he's our answer to Naoko's Speedy Espeon, but first is Zuki's Umbreon. Beatty can nail him with an Earth Power, but a critical hit Dark Pulse forces me to switch to Haymitch, who ultimately gets the KO. So second is the Psychic Spamming Espeon, and my only chance here is to kill him with Peta's priority Sucker Punches. Of course, 1 isn't enough for the KO, which is why the Rebellion's inaugural member is holding a Pitaya Berry. A critical hit would have still easily gotten the kill, but Peta lives to see another day as his second Sucker Punch knocks out Espeon. Third is Flareon, who is simply one-shot by a Surf from Finnick, and fourth is Jolteon, who is completely walled by Wyrus. It seems our queen couldn't care less about Seiyu's double teams. The final Kimono sister is Kuni, whose Vaporeon can be a pretty tough nut to crack. His Surfs hit really hard, and access to Aurora Beam makes grass types generally unreliable, but thankfully Finnick can wall her and rip a few poison jabs to win us the battle. As a result, the sisters have deemed me worthy of meeting Johto's Great Protector Ho-Oh atop Bell Tower. 2 Surfs from Finnick are enough for the KO, and all we gotta do is tank a tiny Sacred Fire. Oh, that's me risking Finnick to a critical hit for no reason. Well, never punished. After one last showdown with Snow, which is yet again wildly underwhelming, we've made it to the Indigo Plateau. All that's left to do is dethrone Lance and rebuild the league from the ground up. It'll take my 6 strongest rebels: Maisley the Quillfish, Rue the Haunter, Lucy Gray the Wheezing, Finnick the Tentacruel, Wyrus the Nidoqueen, and Beatty the Nidoking. Sadly, this means no Peta, but the boy has a future role to play, and we can't risk his death so close to the end. Even so, think of how far we've come since Route 30. From struggling to defeat level 2 Pidgeys, all the way to now facing off against the strongest trainers in Johto. In a way, this all began with Peta, his will to survive. And without that early hard work, our rebellion would have never left Cherry Grove City. So for Peta, and of course for Katniss, let's do this. Will is our first mark, and without a way to stop Rue's Shadow Balls, victory is ours in 5 turns. I really don't understand why he has 2 Zatus and 0 Giraffarigs, but I'm not a member of the Elite Four. Or am I? Koga is second, and though the status-spreading ninja is normally a pain to deal with, he just really can't do much damage here. BD can one-shot Ariados, Venomoth, and Fortress with a flamethrower apiece. Lucy Gray walls Crobat and hits 2 Thunderbolts through a few double teams for a shockingly simple KO. Last then is Muck, and since he doesn't use Minimize on the switch to BD, maybe for the first time ever, we can get the kill with a single Earthquake to defeat the second member of the Elite Four. Bruno is third and largely sinless when it comes to the league's heinous evasion and status spam. The Beefcake prefers to just use brute force, and I'm happy to meet him where he's at. Let the record state that I've typed meat in the script as M-E-A-T because I called Bruno a beefcake. I might be the best to ever do it. Hitmontop eats an Earth Power before heading underground for a dig, which is possibly the worst place to be during an earthquake. More like Hitmon Flop. Seriously, I'm the best to ever do it. That brings in Onyx, so another Earth Power is another easy kill. Third is Hitmonchan, and since he has Ice Punch, I ignore it and stay in to rip Earthquake number 2. It's not enough for the KO, but the king can easily tank an Ice Punch without a problem. So once a few more Earthquakes post full restore take out Hitmonchan, Bruno brings in Hitmonlee, and he has significantly less defense than his punchy brother, which means yet another Earthquake brings our foe down to his final Pokemon. I decide that it's time to give BD a break, so Mazely comes in on a cross chop and starts doing damage with Waterfall. Unfortunately, after one, I need to switch to Wyrus, and with the rivalry nerf, she's barely doing any damage with Earth Power, though a special defense drop mitigates that problem by quite a bit. Even so, she needs the assist from Rue, who can swap in on a cross chop and finish the job with a single Shadow Ball. The final member of the Elite Four is Karen. Normally, her Houndoom is really tricky, but Finnick serves as an excellent counter thanks to his high speed and exceptional special bulk. Instead, the main issue is Karen's Umbreon, who, like with 90% of the enemy trainers in this game, just loves abusing evasion strategies. BD is my strongest attacker, so I was hoping to tear through Umbreon with 2 Earthquakes while he wastes time using a Confuse Ray that would trigger our held Person Berry. But Earthquake is clearly not a 2-hit KO, and Umbreon goes for a double team instead of a Confuse Ray. I decide to switch to Ice Beam here, since another Earthquake would simply cause Karen to use one of her full restores. Unfortunately, BD fails to lock in, and by missing 2 Ice Beams in a row, Umbreon's free to hit us with 2 Confuse Rays. So not wanting BD to hurt himself in confusion, I switch to Wyrus on a feint attack. She at the very least connects with a limp Earth Power before Umbreon sets up a second double team, so now all I need to do is connect with one more Earthquake. Frustratingly, we come in on a Confuse Ray, so I have to switch back out into Wyrus on a payback. I decide to spend a turn using Toxic Spikes to hopefully bait a Confuse Ray on Wyrus, but Umbreon doesn't take the bait, opting instead for another payback. So now a switch back to BD sees him eating a soft feint attack, which finally gives him a chance to rip an Earthquake. That misses and lets Umbreon connect with yet another Confuse Ray. Do you see why the Johto League's gotta go? This is madness. I switch to Wyrus on a feint attack, and then back to BD on another feint attack, but that triggers our Poison Point, which in most circumstances is great, but in this one is terrible because the damage brings Umbreon into the red and causes Karen to heal with a full restore. We are completely back to square one because BD then also misses another Earthquake. At this point, I'm starting to lose it. I'm letting my frustration get the better of me, and that is no way to win a Nuzlocke or lead a rebellion. Our next Earthquake connects as Umbreon sets up double team number 4. Then we miss another Earthquake, and Umbreon connects with a critical hit payback. That's what finally breaks me. I want this Umbreon dead, and in a fit of rage, I blindly instruct BD to hit another Earthquake, one that does connect, but obviously fails to get the KO. So with one last payback, Umbreon kills BD, and I have no one to blame but myself. Finnick comes in and manages to immediately connect with a Surf, so Umbreon finally falls, and the rest of Karen's team soon follows. But to lose a teammate because I couldn't keep my cool? That's shameful, a disgrace, and one I'll need to live with for the rest of my life. Victory will mean nothing if I lose myself along the way. You deserved so much better, BD. rest in peace. I've now got 5 teammates left to deal with Lance's 6 flying types, and if they all want to make it out of this in one piece, we're gonna need to get lucky. The good news is that Rue can immediately one-shot Gyarados with a Thunderbolt to even up the numbers. She also baits out Aerodactyl, the only one of Lance's Pokemon that Finnick doesn't outspeed. So instead, our answer is Little Lucky Maisley, who's holding a choice scarf. As she comes in, she tanks a soft crunch, but then my heart sinks as Aerodactyl lands the defense drop, suddenly all but ensuring my sweet Sardine's demise. The only thing that can save her now is a critical hit or a flinch from Waterfall. But she doesn't get either, so Aerodactyl's super effective Thunderfang is a guaranteed kill. Like her namesake, Maisley never stood a chance against the winged beast, but it was the only thing I could do. I bring in Tentacruel anticipating that Lance will heal, and since he does, we're now free to take the kill with a Choice Specs boosted Surf. That brings in the first of the Johto Champion's 3 Dragonites, so now I gotta switch out. Wyrus comes in as Dragonite miraculously whiffs a Dragon Rush, but on the following turn, he makes up for it with a critical hit. That Wyrus survives with a single hit point. Somehow she's lived. Though the thrills end there, as our rivalry nerfed Ice Beam isn't even enough to bring the dragon into healing range. I mean, logically, the best thing to do is sacrifice Wyrus for a safe switch back into Finnick, but I don't want to do it. Not after a 1 HP survival. I have to imagine there's a reason that Wyrus lived. Perhaps she has a greater purpose in the fights yet to come. So I switch to Lucy Gray, who dodges another Dragon Rush, which is awesome. Lucy also dodges a Hyper Beam, which is decidedly less awesome, because that would have granted us a safe switch to Finnick on the following turn. Now the idea here was to hit Dragonite with a Flamethrower to bring him into healing range and provide Finnick with a safe switch that way, but Flamethrower does way less damage than I thought. So I now just have to hard switch Finnick in on what ends up being another Hyper Beam that this time does connect. With our phenomenal special defense, we shrug off the hit, and then Choice Specs boosted Ice Beams rip through not just this Dragonite, but his 2 siblings as well, leaving Lance with one last Pokemon, Charizard. So I switch back to Lucy Gray on a soft Dragon Claw. I then decide to stay in, which proves to be an entirely pointless risk as an Air Slash shoots Lucy Gray's health bar down to just 33 HP. Our Thunderbolt doesn't even do 50% in return, and unless we want a dead Covey on our hands, I gotta switch out. Finnick comes in and expertly tanks the Air Slash. So with one last Surf, Charizard falls, defeating Lance and earning my team of Rebels a coveted spot in the Hall of Fame. By all accounts, I was the champion. The rebellion had won and we could tear down the Johto League. But ordering that drastic of an action would require more than just the title of champion. To prevent backlash, retribution, insurrection, I needed respect. I needed to be considered the greatest Pokemon trainer of all time, and it needed to be indisputable. The only way to do that is to beat Pokemon Trainer Red, which means that we need to beat the 8 gym leaders of Kanto. Fortunately, with our fairly robust type coverage, all but 3 of them are extremely straightforward. Janine, despite also sporting poison types, is a bit tricky since her Venomoth and her 2 Ariadoses all know Psychic. One could argue that spending a few minutes to get a Psychic spamming Venomoth of my own would make this fight easier, but I don't want to do that. Anyways, Finnick actually naturally outspeeds her lead Crobat, so 2 Ice Beams are enough to get the quick KO at the expense of a defense drop from Screech. The first Ariados comes out next, and I was worried that she'd use a Psychic to trigger our held Pataya Berry, which is my strategy for the far scarier Venomoth, but because of the Screech, Ariados instead opts for a Poison Jab, which does do a shocking amount of damage before we can get the KO on the following turn. That then brings out Venomoth third, so I rip a Surf, which I'm devastated to find out does not 2-shot. So now I gotta risk Rue, who's also holding a Pataya Berry, though a critical hit will still easily kill her. Fortunately, Venomoth opts for Sludge Bomb instead, probably as a result of some weird tinted lens AI, but since Rue actually quad resists the attack, she easily survives the hit and fires off a Psychic for the KO. Her Psychics also one-shot the second Ariados and Janine's Wheezing, so with that, victory is ours. The next problematic gym leader, perhaps unsurprisingly, is Sabrina with her 3 powerful psychic types. Rue is fortunately fast enough to naturally outspeed Espeon and Mr. Mime, so with the choice specs we can ensure 2 easy kills. But that still leaves Sabrina's Alakazam, who is faster, which means that this is a job for PETA. By holding another Payapa Berry, he can switch in on Psychic, and as long as he doesn't get nailed by a critical hit, he can take the clean KO with a super effective Sucker Punch. Congratulations, PETA, your final job is done. Rest up, soldier. The third tricky matchup, as usual, is Blue. He's got 6 Pokemon, all of which hit extremely hard. I lead with Finnick, who can chain kills against Exeggutor with Sludge Bomb and Rhydon with Surf. That then brings in Machamp, threatening with Earthquake, so I switch to Rue, who avoids the attack with her Levitate ability and then retaliates with a Psychic for the clean KO. Arcanine comes in 4th, so I switch back to Finnick on what I'm hoping is not a critical hit Flare Blitz. It does appear that Finnick would have just barely survived the crit, but an Extreme Speed would have then been enough to take the KO. Instead, Finnick is now free to get his own KO with another Surf, bringing in Gyarados 5th. I switch to Lucy Gray as Gyarados sets up an extremely scary Dragon Dance, but since we're holding a Choice Scarf and Gyarados has a minus speed nature, we actually still outspeed Blue's wannabe Dragon, meaning that a single Thunderbolt stops the Dragon Dance sweep before it even gets off the ground. So last is Pidgeot. Thunderbolt does over 50%, but a Citrus Berry means that we're definitely not getting the KO with another one. And since Pidgeot's Air Slash lands a critical hit in return, I decide to just switch to Wyrus. She easily shrugs off an Air Slash before landing a depressingly weak Thunderbolt thanks to Rivalry, but in a way that ends up being a blessing in disguise since it keeps Pidgeot out of healing range and ripe for a KO on the following turn. Just like that, we've snagged all 16 gym badges. Yep, this is definitely the real power of Johto. After some training, where I find a shiny Psyduck that we of course kill. I said that we of course kill. It's time to face off against Trainer Red at the summit of Mount Silver. With just 6 Pokemon left, let's see if we've got what it takes. Red leads with Pikachu, so I send out Finnick, who gets a clean KO with a Surf. This brings in Lapra, who knows Psychic, but Finnick is bulky enough to survive a hit, so I stay in and nail our foe with a Sludge Bomb for solid damage before Psychic hacks away a chunk of our HP. Then I switch to Haymitch, who's been largely absent from this video, but a consistent teammate nonetheless. A Payapa Berry, the run's quintessential item apparently, ensures that he survives a Psychic and can take the second KO of the fight with a super effective Leaf Blade. That brings in Charizard, so Finnick again takes the field. An Air Slash hits hard, but our Surf hits much harder, forcing Red down to his final 3 Pokemon. Snorlax is by far the bulkiest and scariest of his remaining teammates. I switch to Lucy Gray on a crunch that results in another defense drop. Nevertheless, I decide to stay in and trade off attacks. Though despite our defense drop, Snorlax appears to still see more damage with Blizzard. And while our Sludge Bombs do solid damage, this is clearly not a matchup we can win. So once Lucy Gray falls into the yellow, I make a bit of a gamble by switching to Rue, and it pays off immensely as she avoids a Giga Impact. So this baits a crunch, which grants a much safer switch to Wyrus, who's now learned Super Power. With a held black belt, she's poised to get the clean KO here. This has always been her destiny. This is the reason she survived Dragonite's critical hit Dragon Rush, for this exact moment. Or so I thought. Never underestimate how terrible of an ability Rivalry is. Now, Wyrus does dodge Snorlax's Blizzard, but Red is gonna heal, and with Superpower having dropped our attack, staying in would be stupid. So Haymitch comes in as Red heals Snorlax. Leaf Blade does just a bit of damage before Snorlax rips another Blizzard, which leaves us in the red. Again, it might seem logical to sacrifice Haymitch here, but if there's even a chance that we can win this fight deathless, I'm gonna take it. Lucy Gray comes comes in on another hit and survives with 19 HP. At this point, Snorlax should now be completely out of Blizzard PP, so I bring in Plutarch. With Giga Drain, he's able to stay relatively healthy as Snorlax is forced into using random moves. Eventually, Giga Impact brings Plutarch down to just 67 HP, so on Snorlax's recharge turn, I make sure to use Moonlight. Then I switch to Wyrus on yet another Giga Impact, which brings the Queen down to 72 HP. But with that, we can finally take the KO with a superpower. So Blastoise comes in 5th. And though things seem dire, Finnick resists all 4 of our foes' attacks, and with Giga Drain, he can actually gain back more HP than he takes. Critical hit Focus Blasts notwithstanding. Just a few turns later, Finnick has KO'd Blastoise and gotten back over half of his health. All that remains is Venusaur, so we stay in to rip a super effective Ice Beam for less than 50% before Sleep Powder lulls the team MVP into a deep slumber. You earned the rest, buddy. I switched to Plutarch on a Giga Drain, baiting either a Sleep Powder or Sludge Bomb on the following turn. Since it's a Sludge Bomb, Plutarch nearly falls, but this ensures that we can get off an acid for just a little bit more damage. Hopefully, it's enough. Rue comes in on a quad-resisted Sludge Bomb, and then she rips a Psychic. Venusaur's HP bar drops from the yellow to the red, and finally to 0. We've done it! Venusaur falls, winning us not just the battle against red, but the entire run. And now that the rebellion is over, now that victory is ours, the real work begins. For Katniss, for Beatty, and for Maisley, it's now up to us to change things for the better. As always, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Or don't, I don't know, but stay tuned for more Nuzlocke videos. And until then, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.